Hello there, welcome back, Ungainly Titan here, and I want to continue on with the Unearthed Arcana discussion that I began last week on the class feature variants that Wizards of the Coast have published recently on their website on the Unearthed Arcana playtest material. I'll have a link in the video description below to the relevant document, but I already spoke a little bit about it last week in context with some other Unearthed Arcana material that I also thought was interesting and indicated a kind of a new change of direction in the way with the Unearthed Arcana material. I've also had, of course, the time over the last week to look at some of the feedback, look at background information provided on D&D Beyond by Jeremy Crawford discussing this matter, the D&D Beyond people, Todd Kinnerik, discussing this matter, and just feedback on the forums. Overall, the Unearthed Arcana class variant changes seems to be very positive. Now, I'm going to keep this discussion, I want to keep these talks relatively short, half an hour at most, so I'm going to break it up into different sections, and initially I'm going to look here at the Barbarian, Rogue, Wizard options and the one proficiency versatility that's available for all classes. So we'll start with proficiency versatility. So whenever you get an ability score increase, you now get the opportunity from your class to pick out a skill from your class that's available at level 1 and choose to be proficient in that skill, dropping another skill. So you replace the skill that you're proficient in with another skill from your current class that you could be proficient in and become proficient in the new skill. The drop skill does not have to be from your current class. So you could take a skill from a background, or presumably from another class in a multi-class, drop that and become proficient in a skill in the current class. This, as it says, is an out-and-out enhancement. Now, it's something I would have allowed anyway, as people leveled up. I'd be generally pretty generous about respeccing their characters or allowing retraining, because my general view is A, people shouldn't be punished or forced to play classes that they, that they're not happy with. And secondly, I have a group that have actually pretty limited amount of time to play on a weekly basis. We get about 2 hours in a session. So we tend to be fairly generous on the whole respecting thing. We also tend to go kind of light on the exploration pillar. For instance, I don't spend a lot of time on travelling from location to location or worrying about random encounters during the course of travel or survival checks or any of that kind of stuff, mostly because that we're trying to get through an adventure path in a reasonable amount of time with fairly limited playtime to do it. However, it does give or encourages DMs to be generous, shall we say, with players about these kind of matters. And it seems to be part of a trend. I've been sort of looking at one of the advantages, I think, of having Fantasy Grounds is that I have you can look at something like Unearthed Arcana. A lot of it has already accumulated inside Fantasy Grounds. You get it all together rather than have to search through the Wizard's site for individual PDFs. And I've noticed there's quite a few feats that are, again, enhancing characters, allowing flexibility, expertise, allowing double proficiency on skills. Seems to be actually something they're quite generous about these days. So I'm not going to say much more about the proficiency versatility, but I'm going to go straight on to the Barbarian. Now, the Barbarian gets 2 features. Neither of them are enhancements. They're both replacements for existing class features. So you have Survival Instincts, which replaces Danger Sense in the original Player's Handbook. And you get Instinctive Pounce that replaces your speed boost at level 5. Now, the Survival Instincts gives you essentially double proficiency bonuses on 2 skills. You basically could take this instead of Danger Sense. So Danger Sense essentially gives you an advantage on dexterity saving throws against threats that you can see. So if you're saving to avoid traps or evade the effects of traps or minimize the effects of damage from traps, falling damage, stuff like that, and you're not blinded, incapacitated, or deafened, and or say spells, say for instance Fireball is the classic, you get advantage on the saving throws. You give that up for essentially 2 new class proficiencies in which you are new proficiencies in which you get double proficiency bonus. The new survival instincts gives you an actual list of classes. So you have animal handling, medicine, nature, perception, or survival, which does not match the base classes, the class skills of the player's handbook Barbarian. Neither athletics nor intimidation are included, and medicine is not part of your original base class for your Barbarian, so it represents essentially you're getting a new set of class skills, or at least, I mean, there's a fair amount of overlap with your existing class skills, but they're adding medicine, and they're not giving you the opportunity to become doubly proficient in intimidation or athletics, which strikes me as a little odd, and it could very well be an oversight. It might change in the final analysis when this thing finally makes it into an actual rule book. I actually think there is a lot to be said. It's an interesting exchange. I wouldn't say that one is directly better than the other. I would say actually somewhat campaign and DM dependent. That if you're in a particular campaign, say with a lot of traps, or somebody's firing a lot of fireballs at you, you might want the danger sense. But if you're in a campaign that more variety of things happens, and in particular where skills are more important, maybe there's a lot of exploration you might want, or maybe your party's lacking in a healer and you might want to take medicine along with the herbalist feat, for instance, to allow you to use healing kits, and also brew potions ultimately, because brewing potions in Xanathar's Guide can be done just off the herbalist. All you need is proficiency with healing kits, at least for healing potions. It's a specialized thing, so you could do that. I mean, and you could be a barbarian, and it'd be more of a shamanistic barbarian than your regular barbarian. I don't see anything wrong with it. And I definitely think it is a choice, and it's a valid choice, and there are valid reasons that I think you could play either one or the other. Instinctive Pounce instead of an extra 10 feet of movement. Now, Instinctive Pounce basically allows you to take, as a reaction, if somebody moves within 15 feet of you, you can spend half your movement to close the distance with them and not provoke any attacks of opportunity. Whereas this feature that is replacing is the one that just gives you an extra 10 feet of movement. It's a harder one to call. I think there's merit to both. Possibly the extra movement is probably tactically more flexible, but there is merit to both, and it depends, I suppose, on the class you are, or whatever it is, what your race, I think, to a certain extent. I think if you're probably one of the slower races and you've chosen Barbarian so that you're something like a Dwarven Barbarian or a Halfling Barbarian or something like that, you might want to take the extra speed. But I do think there's a limit to how much benefit extra speed is. I don't think extra speed is an unallied good, and there is certainly, I think there is some merit, but it's to Instinctive Pounce, although Instinctive Pounce might not be as strong as the extra speed in general. But I do think it's an interesting option, and I certainly I could conceive of myself taking that in the Barbarian. Now, I've not seen the Barbarian over extended amounts of play, as in multiple sessions of Barbarians. I've seen the odd Barbarian in action, so I don't know how much of a difference it would make from a practical perspective, but certainly on a theoretical perspective, I could see the merit in taking Instinctive Pounce, and I can see the merits in not taking it. I do think overall the extra speed movement is probably gives you more versatility than the Instinctive Pounce would, especially since you use your reaction to do it, and reactions are kind of valuable. You're giving up a potential attack of opportunity, maybe, and to do this reaction. But I could see circumstances where maybe if you're the only melee combatant in the party, that you might want to take the Instinctive Pounce instead of the fast movement. The next option that I want to look at is the Rogue option, which is a cunning action. It's an enhancement. It's a straight up enhancement. It's something you couldn't do previously. You're now allowed to do it, and it's an extra thing that you can do with your cunning action. So it's cunning action aim. And essentially you give up movement to gain advantage on an attack. So you haven't moved in the round, you then can take a bonus action to gain advantage on the attack against the target, and your speed drops to 0. So your standard cunning actions are, you can use cunning action to take a bonus action to disengage or to dash or to hide, which are all quite beneficial, but they are beneficial under different circumstances, but you don't lose those options. This is just something you gain, an additional thing to do. It pretty much means that a rogue will have, I think, a potentially advantage on every attack they make. And certainly they will be able to get sneak attacks in on pretty much every attack they make. So, but it's particularly valuable in a situation where the rogue is actually locked down by an individual opponent. So if your rogue is locked down by an individual opponent, you can now take your cunning action to aim to get an advantage back in that attack against that particular opponent. Very useful, and certainly I wouldn't say no to it. I would certainly be in favour of it, and I don't see any particular downside to it. I don't know, I mean, does it make the rogue overpowered, is supposed the question to ask here. The short answer is that I don't know. It's one of those cases where I pretty much trust Jeremy Crawford when he tells me that the rogue is balanced against having essentially advantage on every attack that it possibly makes. Because again, rogue is one class that I have not seen in campaign. I've seen the rogue in use occasionally on 5th edition and one-shot games, but I haven't actually played in a campaign where we had a rogue character. So I don't know how the rogue stacks up against other characters in actual practice. So again, this would be a situation where I would be taking Jeremy Crawford and the Wizards of the Coast design team at their word by saying that the rogue is balanced under the circumstances. I have no reason to believe that it isn't, but I can't say so from practical experience. If your mileage varies, feel free to tell me. So finally, that gets us to look at the wizard options. Now, the wizard options are probably a bit bland, really. But then the wizard is probably still the top tier character in the game in terms of flexibility and power. Although nowhere near where it was in 3rd edition, where it was rivaled, shall we say, only by the cleric and the druid in terms of abilities to end a fight, shut down a fight, or anything like that. So wizards are getting cantrip versatility. Now the druid and the cleric are also going to get cantrip versatility. This enhances spellcasting. So what it does is that when you train at a level in the class, you could replace one cantrip you've learned with another cantrip from the class for the wizard spell list. And it would be similar for the druid and the cleric, so they could train a cantrip in their respective class lists with another one. I don't think there's anything terribly remarkable about this. I don't even see it as a power boost. I mean, I've always felt myself that wizard cantrips should be on the wizard spellbook. That spell flexibility and spell substitution and swapping is the wizard's thing. and or should be one of the wizard's things at any rate, and it's certainly one of those things that I would never have had a problem with. I wouldn't have stopped a wizard from doing it. And I certainly think it's a benefit to give from Wizards of the Coast to basically give explicit permission for that style of running a wizard. They've also, and they've pretty much done this for every class in the game, but every class in the game has got extra spells. The wizard has probably gotten the least amount of extra spells, and I don't know if they're particularly interesting. I mean, it's got, at second level, gets Orrery, Enhance Ability, which I actually thought was a wizard spell all along, Speak with Dead at third level, and Divination. Now, Orrery and Divination are both rituals. The other two aren't. Yes, I'll be honest with you, I have no problem with this. I think they should have been on the wizard spell list all along. Those spells or variations thereof, maybe not Speak with Dead, but certainly Orrery Enhance Ability, of course, was a classic wizard spell in previous versions, because it is the kind of fold up meta spell that includes Bull Strength, Cat's Grace, Bear's Endurance, Owl's Wisdom, and what was the other one? Eagle's Splendor. From previous versions of D&D that have all been rolled into the one spell now, Enhanced Ability. It's a concentration spell, but it's one that you'd probably only use out of combat. So it is actually it's something, to be honest with you, I had never checked, but I'm surprised that it wasn't on the Wizards list all along. Orrery in Divination, something like that have been on Wizard spell lists in the past, for sure. They might not have been specifically Orrery in Divination, and they might not have been identical to the, because Orrery and Divination were always on the cleric lists. But something similar have been on Wizards spell lists in the past. I certainly remember Consult Mystic Sages, which is probably 4th edition, but there was something similar in 3rd edition, and Consult Planar Oracle, or Consult Planar something or other, I can remember something like that, Consult Outer Planes or something, was another one that Wizards had in the past, I'm pretty sure, if memory serves me correctly. And I don't think there's anything particularly campaign breaking or groundbreaking in these spells, because they're quite limited, and the only problem with them really is, like a lot of divination type spells, they kind of they're dependent on the DM, and they're dependent on how well the DM copes with this kind of stuff, because they don't really provide the DM with any kind of tools to come up with responses to the kind of things the players might get up to in these things. The only issue that I have, I mean, there's people complaining, there are a few people complaining, most of them are giving them short shrift, that the wizard is losing out in this campaign, in this set of class variants, this Unearthed Arcana document in comparison to other classes. Now, I still think the wizard's still a top tier class, and it's still probably one of the most flexible classes coming to spells. The only gripe that I would have is that it's something I've just noticed. It's something I've noticed in the Unearthed Arcana, and it's not just a recent thing. I don't know how far back it goes, but there are certainly a few Unearthed Arcana feats that allow access to skills, that allow people taking those feats to take a double proficiency in those skills. And it seems to me that if double proficiency in skills becomes common among classes, then the signature skills of the various classes should be available for double proficiency. So I would have, for instance, the Barbarian is now allowed to take 2 skills that they get a double proficiency in. If they lose a different class feature to get it, it's part of the Survival Instincts class feature. But if you take Survival Instincts as a Barbarian and surrender up Danger Sense, you now can become proficient in 2 skills and you get a double proficiency in both of those skills. So you have equivalent to the expertise feature that the rogue gets, and I think the bard gets as well. Although a more limited version thereof. The ranger, for instance, gets an ability now that only gives them expertise, double proficiency in one skill. I personally think that the ranger actually should probably get 2, but maybe one of their choice, and one of them being survival, for instance, because they're tracking. Because survival is a core element of tracking, and it's kind of a core element of the ranger's identity. It's just my opinion, anyway. Wizard probably should get Arcana. Bards might get history or something like that. Clerics, religion. Sorcerers, I don't know, something. But if it's becoming a thing that they're allowing a lot of, and they seem to be going down that route, and I don't really have a problem with other classes getting a double proficiency, because I don't think it's necessarily stepping on the rogue's toes as the skill monkey. The rogue still gets the high level ability where they get what you call it, they get to convert rolls to a 10 plus. That is the rogue's 11th level skill reliable talent, which allows them to, anytime they make an ability check with which they have proficiency, so any skill check or even any general ability check where they have proficiency in the relevant ability, they convert any roll from 9 downwards up to a 10. So they're still going to be streets ahead of everybody else in similar circumstances, and I think if you're going to start giving double proficiencies to other classes, then I think the core skill of that class, or at least the opportunity to make a core skill of that class double proficiency, should probably be universal across all classes. The other thing that I think, if you're going to become more generous in giving stuff to players, is that probably give wizards the ability to know maybe all rituals, or perhaps convert spells to ritual format. I think one of the areas that is encroaching on the wizard's territory is the ritualist ability of wizards, and I think they have wizards were a little too cautious in assigning the ritual property to spells, particularly higher level spells. There's quite a few, there's a reasonably good selection of low level spells that are rituals, but once you get into the higher level spells, rituals practically disappear, and some things I think are naturally rituals, in my opinion. Thematically, in terms of the fiction of fantasy, things like scrying and transport magic tend to be rituals, and I certainly would be in favour of bringing in rituals and giving more or less free access to the wizard for rituals. Is something that should be probably looked at. That said, giving all these other goodies to the other classes and giving only the wizard what he's currently got, I don't think it's going to negatively impact the wizard too much. I think the wizard is still pretty solid class, and it's pretty solid at what it does, and it doesn't need much more. The only thing I really would say is that I don't think another class should be better at a wizard, say in Arcana. I don't think another class should be better than a cleric in religion. That's the only niche protection thing that I would see, that I would recommend in response to this whole Unearthed Arcana thing. But in general, I'm in favour of it. Anyhow, I think I've rambled on long enough. We're going to call it a halt here. Tune in next week where we'll start with the Bard and see how far we get on the rest of the classes that are in this Unearthed Arcana. And I will continue this discussion again over the next couple of episodes. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please press like, comment, share. It really helps the channel out. And if you have not already done so, please subscribe to the channel. I will catch you all again soon. Bye for now.